Horror movies are the safest and cheapest way for a studio to make tons of money, and in the 1980s, B-horror movies were a dime a dozen. Films like Return of the Killer Tomatoes and Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, yes, that is a real title, were cheaply made films on very low budgets, which ended up making the studios way more money than they originally invested. While some of these films are downright terrible, I'm looking at you, Troll 2, others are absolute works of art and passion that are rich with charm and originality, and no other cheesy 80s horror film is better, in my opinion, than the 1988 cult classic, Killer Klowns from Outer Space. With a plot that can be described by the title, Killer Klowns from Outer Space tells the story of killer clowns from outer space coming to Earth in a circus tent in order to hunt people down, shoot them with their cotton candy ray guns, turning them into cocoons so that they can drink their insides. The lackluster plot is just the foundation for the true works of special effects mastery presented by the Chiodo brothers, whose credits in special effects and puppetry include Critters, The Lost Boys, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and so much more. The film had a budget of just $2 million, which meant in order to pull this off, they were going to have to use as little money as possible to create these special effects. Luckily for the Chiodo brothers, who have been studying special effects and puppetry together for years, they knew a thing or two about pulling off special effects for absolutely nothing. With the art direction by Philip Dean Foreman, known for his work on Critters as well, the Chiodos managed to make a darkly humorous horror comedy with some absolutely amazing atmosphere and set work. Most of the films in the 1980s lack any sense of artistic intent. Most of them feel like softcore porn with a touch of mild cartoon violence. In Killer Klowns from Outer Space, they almost mock and parody the very genre they're in. Most of the characters we have are pretty cut and dry in classic horror movies. We have Mike Tobacco, yes, that is his actual name, who is our sort of jock type. Then we have the damsel in distress named Debbie Stone. Throw in some corrupt cops, some horny ice cream truck renters, and random 80s stereotypes, and you have a recipe for a classic cheesy 80s slasher. The real question is, what makes this movie different? Ever since I watched this film for the first time, I was immediately struck with this unnerving feeling. This is partially due to the mediocre acting, with most of the characters acting huge and cartoonish throughout the film.
There are killer clowns running around here, then I'm Porky Pig.
Coupled with its timeless 50s aesthetics, the film feels like it takes place in its own weird alternate universe, making the film feel kinda reminiscent of classic 50s and 60s sci-fi. Of course, the actual clowns add to this as well, with some of the most beautifully disgusting puppets and costumes and animatronics I've ever seen used in film. There was a trend in the late 80s and early 90s of filmmakers making these horrifically large and lifelike creatures in their film, and I absolutely love it. Shows like Dinosaurs and movies like Dark Crystal were almost 100% made around these types of puppets and absolutely terrified me throughout my childhood. They are definitely on the uncanny valley spectrum. But so much love was put into this movie, and it really shows when you watch the behind-the-scenes commentary on just how long some of the most simplest scenes in the film took to pull off.
Girl answers the door, and there's a pizza delivery clowns. Pizza, right? We have a clown pop up, shoot the ray gun, and turn her into a cocoon. That looks real easy. 20 takes later, the guy in the suit, we stacked 10 pizza cartons. The guys had to hold them. The guy had to pop up through the hollow ones, have a perfect eye line with his target, plus get his hand through there with the oversized clown gloves and point the gun in the screen direction of the actress. Take one, no good. Gun's over here. Take two, the box top didn't go up right. And then he needed a rest. Take 3, 4, 5, and 6, something else went wrong.
The Chiodos were absolute perfectionists, and it really does show. Each scene with the clown utilizes years and years of special effects mastery. They even managed to pull off an actual believable multiple story tall clown, and to be honest, it looks amazing. Every scene feels like the Chiodos are flexing their skills, usually involving the clowns killing someone with a themed gag. Each scene is funny and kinda dark, and they are absolute masterworks of practical special effects. This probably gets into my last and most educated point, and the biggest stretch I'm gonna say about this film. Killer Klowns from Outer Space is a German expressionist film. And before you guys try to argue with me, I know that this film isn't German, but it very much so follows in the style. Political satire is the first checkmark on my made-up list of what it takes to be called a German expressionist film, but Killer Klowns is full of it. Everyone is a satire of common stereotypes of the 1980s, and there isn't really any large political message, like in the very original independent film, 1913 Student of Prague by Paul Weger, which tells the story of a young student looking for love who is ultimately cloned by a sorcerer. This clone is filled with power of life and goes around wreaking havoc. If this doesn't sound familiar, it's because it is. Both Netflix Living with Yourself and Jordan Peele's Us play on similar themes. But The Student of Prague uses its rather basic horror monster movie plot to create satire of, at the time, modern society, similar to Killer Klowns from Outer Space with its corrupt cops and rambunctious teenagers. The next thing is the set work. German expressionist films are famous for the low contrast, out-of-the-ordinary sets. Examples of this being the crazy, almost pre-Tim Burton-inspired world of Robert Wing's 1920 classic Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which heavily inspired the works of Tim Burton and, I believe, the Chiodos. Like Killer Klowns from Outer Space's circus tent and funhouse, the sets of Dr. Caligari feature very similar stripes and weird diagonal shapes, making the audience look like they're almost in a cartoon. I think the Chiodos were heavily inspired by German expressionist works of the 1920s, and these set pieces we can see in the film are direct homages to it. I feel like Killer Klowns from Outer Space is more than just a cult classic. It is more than just a silly title. It is blood, sweat, and tears of Hollywood's best special effects artists, and it is a fun, artfully done joyride till the very end. I'm going to talk a lot about B-80s horror films on this channel, so I'm very excited to start off with my favorite. I hope you guys really like this video.
Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Holy shit.